Hi, I'm Alden.
And I'm Galden.
We're Good Twin, Bad Twin. Today we're talking with Congressman Benny Thompson. We're going to be discussing a number of things. His opinions about vaccine, the things that have been happening with impeachment trials. Just stay tuned. He has a lot of great information that you want to take in.
Plus, if you were looking to know how to reach out or how to make a difference, he's going to give you some examples of how to do that, plus contact information. So even if you're not discussing it with your congressman, these are the steps necessary.
Exactly. So stay tuned. Good morning, Congressman Thompson.
Good morning. How are you?
Just great, just great. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you this morning. Uh,
Well, I look forward to the opportunity.
we've been looking forward to this since the last time we met you at or had the opportunity to sit down with you at the March on Nissan in Mississippi. There,
Mhm.
we really enjoyed the conversation. My twin brother will be joining us momentarily, but we can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's a lot to talk about. There's a lot been going on in the world out there, or in you guys' world.
Well, you're absolutely correct. The old saying is never a dull moment would be an understatement.
Awesome. We saw you recently on CNN in some historical moments. Speaking of the most recent events, when they had the insurrection on the Capitol, they showed you in some heroic moments there. Looked like you were unbothered or unmoved in some of the shots.
Well, some of the people who were breaking in to the Capitol, I've had to deal with them all my life. So I know what racist, segregationist, white people, for the most part, who they are. I live with them every day. And so a lot of my colleagues have operated on the principle that things have changed. I operate on the principle that even if things are changing, there are still some bad people in the world. And Donald Trump was able to get all those bad people together on January 6th to storm the Capitol. So part of who I am is to be prepared. And a lot of my colleagues who absolutely had the fear in their heart just kind of hunkered down in fear. But if you're going to deal with the enemy, you need to face the enemy. And so my whole posture that afternoon was, if he comes or she comes, then I'm prepared to deal with whoever comes. You got to be in your best posture when your enemy presents himself in a threat.
Okay. Well, you did us proud. It wasn't a matter of seeing you fight or something like that, but you looked almost, if I could use like presidential. You looked heroic, stoic, in the face of adversity.
Yeah, when you've had as many phone calls threatening you because you stand up for equal rights, civil rights, women's rights, all that, you get labeled a certain way. But also it prepares you for what's out here. So all these years more or less manifested itself in that situation. I can tell you right now on this clip, a lot of us are not through with it. It doesn't matter. It matters about impeachment, but it's not the last step. Some of us are going to take this president and some of those crazy folk to court because my civil rights as an individual that day were violated. And so I'm going to have my day in court. So we do the impeachment thing. but I can assure you in the not too distant future, Donald Trump and his lawyers will have to defend what happened on January 6th and his language that led up to January 6th. So it'll be a good opportunity.
Well, I applaud you for that, because actually that was going to be one of my thoughts. And when you speak about your colleagues, I don't understand why your colleagues in the House and those in the Senate that were very vocal, and Facebook, you name it, along with Trump the whole time, passing on this garbage, passing on these untruths, stoking the fire. Why aren't they being talked about now, or why aren't they being excommunicated from Congress or the House? They should be out just like he should be out.
Yeah, that, and obviously, we the member from Georgia, Congresswoman Green, we took her 2 committee chairs assignments from her because of her language and because of her talking about putting a gun or a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head. That's not the language that you would expect to come from a member of Congress, and all the incendiary tweets that have come about. We shouldn't have to put up with that. So for the most part, people get validated in the House every 2 years, in the Senate every 6 years. But being stupid, insensitive, racist, misogynistic, all those terms, they go with some of my colleagues. I'm embarrassed, to be honest with you, that the greatest democracy in the world has now started producing these kind of elected officials. Donald Trump was the manifestation of that racist environment that continues to permeate the entire American culture. So can you imagine those people who broke into the United States House of Representatives? They call themselves patriots.
Right. I served for this country, and I was disgusted. I don't consider that patriotism. That disqualified what I call. I'm a patriot. I served. I picked up a rifle. I went across this country. What they did is nothing compared to what I call patriotism.
Well, but that's that brainwashing over time that Donald Trump and his compadres have pushed out there, and social media has amplified it to the point that when Donald Trump invited those people to come to Washington after the November election and said, "Come to Washington, it's going to be wild." Now, I don't know what that means to Donald Trump, but I know what it means to people like me and you. That means something's going to happen. So they stoked the flames. They helped people get to Washington. They chartered buses and did a whole bunch of things to bring people in. And then in the middle of the rally, he tells them, go to the Capitol and let them know you don't like what they're doing, that stop the steal. But what we were doing on that day is what the Constitution requires us to do, that we have to meet in a joint session and each state certifies their electoral votes. And so that's what we were doing. And so all of a sudden, he tells them to march to the Capitol. And yourself, in Washington, D.C., you have to have a permit. Now, they had a permit for the rally that was held a little over a mile away from the Capitol. But then he tells them to march to the Capitol. And that's what they did. And basically, they overran the security forces. They jumped the barricades, and everything you saw on TV with your own eyes was actually what happened. If somebody had to tell the story of what happened, that's one thing. But if you saw people assaulting police, breaking windows, breaking doors down, but you saw it with your own eyes and you said, well, this is the citadel of democracy being attacked by so-called patriots because they didn't like the outcome of the election. You know, the beauty of our democracy is we settle our differences at the ballot box. Sometimes your candidate win, sometimes my candidate win, but under normal circumstances, I say, well, I'm coming back in 2 years or 4 years. I'm gonna get myself together. We don't riot, we don't burn, we don't pillage, we don't break in. And that's what's held us up so good as a country, because that's what we stand for. Here, Donald Trump had his people acting like third world countries. You know, in third world countries, if you're fortunate to have an election, if it doesn't go your way, man, they just tear up everything.
Right.
And part of who we are, here we are, the number one country in the world, the number one democracy, everything. And now here we acting like the worst of the folk in those third world countries. So, but it's all Donald's fault. It's all his fault.
Yeah, as we ridicule those countries, we're acting like that now.
That's right. That's right. So now I've had people contact me saying, you know, I can't imagine what would have happened to the United States of America if Donald Trump had gotten reelected. You know, I saw him mishelm this pandemic. I saw him spend $6 billion on a wall. Now, that can't stop it. But now, I used to tell people, why do I need to build a wall when I have satellites that can see you coming 500 miles away?
Right.
You know, all I got to do is follow you with the satellite because we have the technology. And I'm waiting on you when you get to the border.
Right.
Say, I don't know why it took you a month to get here. I've been watching you all the way.
Right.
So, but that's the psychology that he put in the minds of people, that somehow the greatest technological country in the world can revert to the most primitive method of protection, and they buy it, spend $6 million. But worse than that, he told them Mexico was gonna pay for it.
Right.
Mexico,
they never paid a dime.
No. So, but this is part of his scheme to just take over this country. And let me tell you, I had a lot of my white friends come and apologize for voting for Trump. They'd tell me, well, I knew how he was talking, but I just knew because he was a businessman, he was just trying to get elected. I said, oh, so I can be crazy and white and you'll vote for me. But if a black person act like that, you wouldn't get within 50 feet of him. I said, but that's that double standard. And you and I and others have had to live with that double standard forever.
Well, Congressman, I could talk all day about Trump. Actually, my blood is boiling, so I kind of want to shift to something else. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind? Maybe how long you've been in Congress? How did you start to even want to be in Congress?
Thank you very much. I was elected special election in 1993. There were 15 of us in the race. It boiled down. I made the runoff and I defeated my opponent. And I've been blessed to have been reelected every 2 years since. So I've spent 27 years here in Congress. I chair the House Homeland Security Committee, which was created after the actions of 9/11. And so I live in Bolton, Mississippi. I was born in Bolton, Mississippi. And I tell people that I still attend the same church that I was baptized in. I've had one church home my whole life. I went to segregated public school of Hinds County, never having a new textbook my whole public school career. My textbooks, for the most part, had names of children in it that I didn't know. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, in my area, you were Smith or Jones or Robinson or Thompson or something like that. But I would have Geiselbrecht, names like Weisinger. I'm saying, who are these folks? And so finally, my high school American history teacher had the courage to tell me, well, these are the books that the white kids have used and passed down to us to teach you all with. Oh, so yeah. And then, so it started clicking, something wrong with this picture, because I used to ride a bus on a route that was 50 miles one way to get to Hinds County Agricultural High School. I'd go past 2 white high schools on that same bus to get to that school, not understanding that as a Black kid who was an honor roll student who kept his nose clean, I couldn't go there. But it was the law of the land. So that kind of gave me an introduction to my philosophy 50 plus years later, that in America, in Mississippi specifically, segregation manifested itself in a lot of ways. I'm a United Methodist. My church was the first denomination to integrate, okay? But there are a bunch of white United Methodist churches who pulled out, who said, oh no, said we serve a different God. We can't have you worshiping the same God as I do in the same church. Now, you can worship that God over there in your segregated church, but we're not going to let you worship that God in the same church as us. So that's kind of the backdrop. I've been a mayor, I've been a county supervisor, I've been a member of Congress, and I was fortunate along the way to have attended Tougaloo College. I met Martin Luther King Jr. On the campus of Tougaloo College. I met Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, James Brown, every major figure of that time, because in the 60s, it was still illegal for whites and Blacks to assemble on state-owned universities' campus. So Tougaloo became the Mecca for civil rights. And so, because it was a private college, close to Jackson, but at that time, Woodley, Woodhaven, all those subdivisions didn't exist. So when you crossed Hanging Moss Road, you were in the boonies, so to speak. So I got that experience. I met Fannie Lou Hamer, Meg Evers, a lot of people during my matriculation there, and so it kind of inspired me to stay home. Majority of my graduating class at Tougaloo left Mississippi, and obviously because it was still very much segregated in 1968. But it was my mother and myself at that time. My father had died when I was in high school, and I could not see myself leaving my mama to live by herself and me go off. So I made the decision. The good thing is I met my wife at Tougaloo. So she's a Delta girl from Mound Bayou, Mississippi. And so after Tougaloo, I came back home, and I'm still here, 50 plus years later.
Well, we certainly thank you. Thank you for giving us that backdrop. You have a wealth of history that comes with you, and sometimes when you talk, we can tell that. I certainly wished I had been around to be family Hamer. I'm sure she was a pistol, like most things suggest. I'm sure she would have been a real treat to me. But let me ask you this. I want to do another shift. You've been in you talk about that history. You talk about the things that you've accomplished. Can you tell us? I want to bring up the Black Caucus. One reason I want to bring up the Black Caucus is for the current president, accountability for the current president. But I also would like for you to kind of slide back to the Obama era. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that have been accomplished or were accomplished in that area? I only bring it up because there's this thing that Trump was the most pro-African American president. And I've heard that that's not true. I've read some things that talk about, because of the work that you guys did with the Black Caucus, there were quite a few things that the common people don't know about that you guys, with the help of Obama, accomplished or instituted. So is that true?
Well, look, a lie doesn't care who tells it. So those folk in the Donald Trump orbit who tried to insinuate Trump had done more for Black people. Yeah. So, but the people who were telling the story, none of us knew. Look back. So now, where you been all this time? You know, if you throw a bone out of a house into the yard, somebody gonna pick it up. So Donald Trump would throw bones out the White House, ostensibly for Black people, and somebody Black would pick it up. That doesn't mean he care about you, because he's giving you the bone. So when I look at the Obama administration, and let me tell you, there's some pride associated with it. I was one of the early supporters of him when a whole lot of people said a Black man couldn't get elected president. I said, well, it might not be, but we need to make a statement. And so, we kept ticking along. And finally, in my lifetime, I was able to see a Black man elected president of the United States who stayed there 8 years, scandal-free. People started saying, well, I don't like the way he walked. He walked like he cocky. I'm saying, whoa, what that got to do with him being president? You know how they would say that why Michelle doesn't wear dresses with sleeves. I'm saying, what do you mean? So was she the first lady? I said, no, you just jealous because her arms look so good and yours. So let's get this right. So the Affordable Care Act took us a long time to get it. When you get 65 in America, you get a Medicare card. So you red, white, and blue card. So we're gonna take care of your health needs. But there were millions of Americans who couldn't afford health care, who went to work every day, but they were frying chicken, they were cooking hamburgers, they were cutting pup wood, they were doing hard work, but they'd go every day. But they didn't have health benefits, they didn't have a retirement, but they still worked. And so the Black Caucus, working with progressives and others, came up with the Affordable Care Act. And so it took us almost 3 years to get it passed. We got it passed, and almost overnight, 20 million people became eligible for insurance, affordable insurance. Before that, if you had high blood pressure, diabetes, anything like that, you either couldn't get the insurance or you had to pay double or triple the premium. So the Affordable Care Act is attributed to the Obama administration. The other thing is the statute of the United States of America was elevated because for the first time we engaged our enemies by talking to them. You know, this notion that because I have this military, anybody disagree with me, I just go fight them. Well, we exercise diplomacy. And so our standing in the world was great. We started talking to Cuba. That's just 90 miles off our shore. So we did a lot under the Obama administration. We highlighted historically Black colleges and their worth to America. We started criminal justice reform movement in this country. We did away with this notion that if you catch me with crack, I get a long sentence, but if I'm caught with cocaine, you get a shorter sentence. Well, crack is a derivative from cocaine. So you sent me to jail for the derivative, and the person with the cocaine ostensibly got a slap on the wrist. Well, that's because the guy with the cocaine was white, and the person with the crack, for the most part, was Black. So we took that disparity in sentencing away. And guess what happened? They started then talking about, well, we don't need to criminalize drugs anymore. We need to talk about more rehabilitation. So all of a sudden, when you used to throw the book at me, which means I get back out of jail, I got a felony record. Most of the jobs that I want to do, I got this felony record over my head. And guess what? I can't even vote because you've taken my citizenship away from me. Well, this person on cocaine, if he went to rehabilitation, he came out, could keep his job, could still vote, and just, oh, well, you just made a mistake. So that double standard in criminal justice reform, we're doing away with many of those things. It's still not complete now by the shape of any imagination. But we started the criminal justice reform, and again, we put Black people in positions we'd never seen before. So I'm proud of the Obama administration. I'm even prouder now with the Biden administration because he acknowledges the racist past of the United States of America. And for a white man to acknowledge that Black and brown people and Native Americans have been mistreated, which is already proven in the history books, and say that my administration will have a racial reckoning for this country. That's a strong public statement. And a lot of us are going to work toward making sure that he keeps his word.
There are two things that he's already done that I wanted to address. He signed an executive order taking away the funding for federal prisons. In that, does that do away with those prisons, or will they get private funding and continue on? And
well,
then
go ahead.
He also addressed the housing department with the years of inequities with the housing. Yeah. Well, right now he's signed some 30 plus executive orders dealing with a lot of things. You've heard of the prison industry complex. Well, that's the note that communities are told, well, if you get this prison in your community, it's going to be jobs. And so if you take, like in one of my districts is Tallahatchie County. Well, in Tallahatchie County, on the western side of Tallahatchie County, we have a federal prison.
There are 1,200 inmates who are housed there, but they're from all over the country. But the thing that bothers me is the pay for the guards there is around $10 an hour. That same company has a prison in Texas, and they pay $18 an hour for the same correctional officer job. So we are being taken for granted just because we're from Mississippi. But worse than that, they have a contract with the Bureau of Prisons guaranteeing that that prison will have 85% occupancy. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, we got to keep people coming in the system because we got this contract that we got to pay for. So rather than rehabilitation or something like that, we start warehousing inmates. And so President Biden, with the stroke of a pen, said, "Oh, nope, we're not going to do that." Said we're gonna leave alone. We're gonna walk away from it, and then we're gonna circle back because there are two levels of imprisonment. One is those people with the U.S. Marshal Services and other things, but there's also the immigrants who are caught in this country by ICE, and they're housed in some of those facilities too. But we have more than enough beds in the federal prison system without outsourcing it to a private deal. So I support his effort to do away with it. They kicking and screaming and all that, but
will they go away or
yeah. Some of them have to go away because they were built solely for the purpose of housing federal inmates. And we got to see what we have to do. Everybody that makes a mistake doesn't have to be locked up. You know, we go to church when we did go to church before this pandemic and ask for forgiveness, you know. So why can't I have some alternative to incarceration for certain crimes? Everybody shouldn't have to go to jail. And what you and I know, white kids get probation, kids get jail, you know? And so now we're trying to take that double standard out of the system by saying, no, in the federal system, you're going to have to look for alternatives first, because guess what? It's cheaper too. Because if I lock that person up and might be the breadwinner in the family, when that person go to jail, that family is totally disrupted, and they ultimately have to go on the system, food stamps, Medicaid. So actually, it's costing me more locking somebody up who was taking care of his family. Why can't I put a ankle bracelet on him and tell him you got to be home at 7 o'clock every evening, and you know, that kind of thing? That's one of those alternatives to incarceration, and I think we have to look at that.
Thank you for addressing it. Speak to the housing, if you don't mind. What is
one of the things with housing is affordability, number one. The other thing we have to do is availability. So he has now nominated Congresswoman Marcy Fudge, a good friend of mine, who was a mayor before she came to Congress, but she was also the national president for Delta Sigma Theta sorority. So she comes with impeccable credentials. She's a lawyer. She's also been a judge. So Congresswoman Fudge's confirmation comes up in the not too distant future to be Secretary of HUD, but she comes out of the projects. You understand? She's a project baby. So you can come from the projects and make it, but a lot of them don't. So the culture that creates the negativity around project housing or affordable housing, she's prepared to do away with that. President Biden also understands that it was the registered voters who lived in that type housing made the difference in his election. So when he says, I'm going to remember the people who voted for me, they view him as a statesman. So, oh man, that's good. Now, if I said that, say I'm going to remember the people who voted for Bennie Thompson, they're going to call me a racist. You know what I'm saying? It's still that double standard out there, brother. Don't let me fool. But we getting there. So affordable housing and available housing is part of what he's absolutely committed to doing. And he's putting people in place to execute it.
Are they going to correct the wrongs that the housing industry did in terms of those years of redlining, economic exclusion?
Yeah, well, that's right. The Community Reinvestment Act. He's going to bring that back, and banks are going to be graded on who they loan money to. Now, if you look at the redlining you're talking about, there are certain parts of any community that if you don't invest in it, that community is going to go down. And those banks are a prime partner for that investment to occur. Now, banks will finance a church anywhere because a church is pretty much a lock on paying the mortgage. They'll finance a funeral home pretty much anywhere because for sure, if you live, you're going to die. So banks use that. So you see nice funeral homes, you see nice churches, but all around them, it tends not to be so nice. That's because that bank is not making mortgage loans. That bank is not making home improvement loans in the community because they see it as a risk. Well, now we're going to rate that bank on where they loan money. Other thing we're going to rate on is where they put their branches. In West Jackson, there's one branch bank on what is that, Dalton Street. We don't even have, look, and I hate well, it's West Jackson. Where you gonna buy a hamburger at in West Jackson? You know what I'm saying? That's because they don't have the commercial investment, but you got the population. So that population has to go on the other side of town for the most part to basically get anything. And that's because of the lending practices of financial institutions. So he's going to start bring that back. And the banks don't like it because they want us to put our money in their institutions, and they pay us 1% interest or 2% interest on the money. Then they're gonna loan that investment in the suburbs at 7-8%. So they're making money off our money just because we put it in their bank. Now we might have $300-400 in the savings account, but you know, if we got 1,000 people putting $300 in savings, you can minute they hit your bank, you can loan it according to the regulations. So I mean, that's what it is, and we're gonna hold those banks accountable. The majority of the banks in our state don't have any black folk on their board. They still white. You know, last check, money was green, and so he's committed to doing that, and I'm just really excited about it because that bank charter says that you're gonna loan money to people irregardless of their stature. They meet certain qualifications. But we know white businesses that have filed bankruptcy, and they can go right back to that same bank and make a loan.
Now with these changes, will how it affects us on the ground? Will the caucus or will you do like town halls and say, hey, you guys should start, now it's okay to start businesses in this area. You can go to this bank, this bank, this bank.
It's still a business. You gotta put the numbers to it, and the numbers have to work. but we have enough program that can help prop people up if they have an idea. But there's no such thing as a grant to go in business. You know, you got to have.
What we saying about being able to get the word out like,
About
those programs that you right? Because
Well, you know, you push it out as much as you can. The challenge has been for the last almost year now is how do you Zoom calls and town halls and stuff like that. You can push out a newsletter, various ways. But these programs, for the most part, are on the books. And if you're really pursuing it, you can find them. Now, the challenge is people prepared to meet the requirements that access to the capital is. Sometimes you have to find a partner. Sometimes you have to crawl before you walk. And my challenge has always been the demographics of a district that's struggling is you got to start someplace. So we've encouraged cities to get into the program. We've encouraged counties, but the federal incentives that allow them to get there. We vote on the programs, but you got to have the capability and capacity to manage the money that's available. And so we have monies for housing. We had a small business administration, USDA, all have lending programs. We have Hope Credit Union, for instance, was the largest PPP small lender in the state. When we did the first CARES money, they cut credit unions out. When it came back the second time, we stuck it in there and earmarked it. And the banks got mad. It's, whoa, you wasn't loaning money to the little people. So why are you upset? Well, that's because they're big friends. Butler Snow Law Firm got that big building going up. Interstate 5. They got $8 million in PPP loans. $8 million. They're saying they can't make it because of this pandemic. And they're one of the largest law firms in the state. But they got it, you know? So you push things out as best you can. But to be honest with you, you can never push out enough. Generally, if people call the office inquiring, we can direct them to the same information we have. It's just that when you do town halls and what have you, I had one last Friday in Greenville, Mississippi. We dealt with Black farmers. We had over 100 Black farmers. One of them was farming 3,000 acres. So we try to tell it based on where we see the interests lie at that time. So with the Biden administration just kicking off, not having completed his cabinet, we got trying to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. And that's why he's doing all those executive orders.
Will the education system be addressed? And I mean specifically how African Americans are being viewed, or our story has been told or not told.
Oh, absolutely. The largest caucus in the Democratic caucus is the Black caucus. There are more Black caucus members now. We have 59. We've never been that big before. And that's 59 out of 221 members of Congress. Well, so they listen. The last CARES Act, we had monies for historically Black colleges. We have cancellation provisions included for student loan money for people. Now we're trying to come up with a specific package that could cancel more of the student loan obligation for students in this country. I'm convinced that it'll happen. It'll be somewhere between $20,000-$50,000 if they're there, which will be a significant opportunity for young people who are carrying that burden of student loan. And so we see that. The reality is that student loan becomes part of the family income, because whatever is left over, you know, I gotta get to school, I gotta eat. So I mean, that's what it is. So and so Biden has heard that, and they're gonna do a specific carve out for those federally insured student loans. It won't cover bank loans, but it'll cover those loans that young people got to go to undergrad or graduate school.
Awesome. When will you see those things take effect? Some of the things you just.
Well, that cancellation, the Historically Black College program is already in effect. One of the provisions we put in there is if you had a default rate on your loans, you couldn't loan money to students who come to your school. And we said, wait now, these folks struggling. You gonna penalize the school because they made a loan? So they ain't no bank, you know, they met the requirements. So we took that out. And so automatically it made every historically Black college that had been disqualified or was about to be disqualified for making loans to students to come there. So that was a godsend, because we had several colleges in this country that would not have been able to open if that provision had stayed in there. So we were able to get that. In the CARES Act, that cancellation provision is being negotiated as we speak. We will probably vote on the final passage the first or second week in March of this year. And if that happens, then that's immediate relief for those students.
Awesome. What are there any other major things that the agenda items that the Black Caucus have in mind, or objectives?
Well, yeah, we have put together a whole list of criminal justice reform, the affordable housing. We're talking about healthcare. We're talking about investment in underserved communities. The other thing we're bringing back is instituting a program within every federal agency specifically targeted at minority and small business. See, right now, if these agencies says, oh, we don't discriminate, all you have to do is compete. Well, the assumption is I'm on the same level as you.
Yeah.
You know, so what we said, no, we're gonna take that off. That discourages participation. So we're gonna talk about partnerships. So if you're gonna bid on this, you're gonna have you a partner with you, but it's not gonna be a partner that works for your company. You know what I'm saying? What we've seen when companies talk about minority participation, they just go get an employee out the company and say, this is my partner. No, a partner means just what it says. So if you list this person has to have an up and going company. And if you're successful, we're gonna make two-party checks. You know, in the past, we just made one-party check. And that brother or sister, sometimes they can get paid. But if that brother or sister is on that check that's coming from the federal government, I guarantee you, they're not going to endorse that check until they can have their money. And so little things like that, but it's going to take time. But we also have a provision that you get graded by how many of the small minority businesses contracts that you go. So if you're looking for a raise or a bonus, it's going to be evaluated on how you handle this procurement. So those are things that we have to structurally put in place. Just saying we don't discriminate has not been good enough, because the reality is we're still at the back of the bus in the financial end.
I would ask, like, I'm gonna give you an example, like a company like the Kellogg Foundation, right? The Kellogg Foundation is notorious for being able to give out millions of dollars in grants or monies that they give back to the community. But the average person, if you don't know that the Kellogg company does that, then it's a challenge to get access to that the information or to those funds. Like in the case where you're saying we're gonna kind of level the playing field by allowing these companies to not just go pick the person that's the employee, but they have to pick somebody out in the community, right, to partner, because then it's a true partnership. Well, if I am the person that would perhaps qualify for that partnership, how would I know that that information is now available to me? I can hear you saying it, but I don't know where to go, where to look. You kind of get what I'm saying? How would I know to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
It's disconnect between the people
Yeah.
searching, and then because a lot of times we get a lot of the new policies, but the person searching for that help is a disconnect. I don't know that that the help is out there available for me now.
Well, now we fund agencies that's supposed to help small businesses, if business, like at Jackson State, we recently helped them start their small business assistance center. As a small business, you should go there and they would be able to help you. That same business opportunity is located on the coast at that. So there are some agencies designed to help. The problem with trying to meet the standard that I hear you saying is there will never be too much information, because somebody's going to say, I didn't know. So to the extent that these are public funds, any money that's spent goes through what's called the Federal Register. There's a website called grants.gov that shows every federal program in existence. So if say you are interested in telecommunications, you'd go to that website, put in telecommunications, and you would get back every program that the federal government participate in right there, which is hundreds. Then you got to go through those programs and see which one might have applicability to what your interests are. So I would encourage to do that. There are some programs, like we have the planning and development districts. We have 10 in the state of Mississippi. Here in the Jackson metropolitan area, it's the Central Mississippi Planning and Development District. That agency has provided funds that basically part of it is to help small businesses write their business plan and come up with a budget. So, it's still a business. And if people are going to invest in your business, you need to have the ability to come up with the plan. But we have programs and agencies that help you write the plan. And so it's a business. So I just encourage people in this age of technology to take advantage of it as best they can. But in the end, if you call my office, 601-669-003, we can point you in the right direction, and we'd be more than happy to.
When you repeat that number for me, please, we got a little discount. 601-866-9003. And
kind of tell them where you're from. And Fannie Ware is my district director, and she'd be more than happy to work with you on any of that.
Okay, awesome. I want to, before we recap, I want to, because we've talked about a lot. So before we kind of re-summarize what we talked about, there's two things that I wanted to talk about. One is your thoughts on the vaccine, encouraging people to take it, not take it. What are your thoughts on the vaccine? And two, what is our responsibility as African Americans now? Since you alluded to hope and change and all the changes that are coming, what is our role as you would say? I need you to do this. Because you're in the position, you are the authority.
Well, I'm glad you say the hard question for last. So let me tell you, this pandemic is awful. Donald Trump mismanaged it. He said a year ago, almost to the day, that, it's just like the flu. It's going to be here and go away. They were telling him that this thing was serious and that we were going to have to ramp up, but he didn't. And so we've had, 400,000+ people that die and millions who've been infected with it. There's a plan now. Now, in terms of reality and whether or not people take the shot, there's no alternative. It's like, I understand the Tuskegee experiment and all of that, but I have close personal friends who actually have died from COVID. And so if the vaccine, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna, you take, it's your choice. I encourage it. I've taken both shots, just like most folk. I don't like folks sticking me with a needle, but I got to do what's in my own best interest. So those people who are out there saying they're not going to take it, it is an individual choice, and I understand that. But on the other side of it, the rollout in Mississippi and in other states has been horrible. And in the Jackson metropolitan area, the first two sites, one was at Trustmark Park in Rankin County, and the other one was at the health department in Madison County. Now you have the capital county, you got more people in Hinds County, more people who are at risk in Hinds County, and you don't even have a location. Now, that is not stupidity. That was by design. And so it took people raising hell about the disparity all over the country. If Black people and brown people are the people most at risk, then you would think common sense would say, let's go to them first. Well, but common sense is a rare commodity when you are racist, because you are following a color code and not the Hippocratic oath or anything like that. So now, after all the hullabaloo, we now have gotten in the state health department to join with churches, join with community health centers, and those two entities, they serve that vulnerable population. You go to Jackson Hinds Health Center on Northside Drive and Medgar Evers Boulevard, it's packed. You go to the Aaron Henry Center in Clarksdale, Mississippi, it's packed with people trying to get the vaccine. But you go to College Hill Church in Clarksdale, they got people there because we got them the availability to do that. And so we've been able to get that. Now I tell you, the only struggle we've had is getting elected officials to raise that issue that my constituents are not being served. And so, most of the time it's the same folk raising hell. I have elected officials calling me about something they ought to do. I had a county that I represent with 4 Black supervisors, didn't have a single area in their county for vaccination. And the one white representative was the one who called me, said it wasn't right. People having to go to Batesville when they could come to my county. And then so I called them, and then they finally get it up to speed. But it's a struggle from my perspective when there are a lot of state and local issues that ought to be handled by the local elected officials. And so we were able to get this vaccine distributed in a lot of areas. And, when they say, well, Walmart has it, Walgreens, CVS. So if I went to Jefferson County, where Fayette is, there ain't no Walmart, there ain't no Walgreens,
CVS.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm talking on Monday with the principal person at the White House to say, okay, you did that. That's good, but that's not the universe. What about those people who live in communities where they don't have? I come up to Claiborne County, they don't have Walmart, they don't have a CVS, they don't have Walgreens. I go to Sharkey County, they don't have Walmart, they don't have a CVS, they don't have a Walgreens. Issaquena County, same thing. Belzoni, Humphreys County. You know what I'm saying? So Walmart for some is part of the solution, but it's not the total solution. So we're gonna try to work through that next week. And obviously, for those populations, they are blessed to have large church facilities with fellowship halls and parking that can accommodate many of those populations in those communities. Because on top of all of that, we don't have a public transportation system. So if I wanted to go get a shot, I got to pay somebody $15, $20 to go get a free shot. You know what I'm saying? So we gonna make our case that since the government is paying 100% of the cost of those vaccines, we can charter buses, we can rent places, because at the end of the day, you send a bill to the federal government and we're gonna pay for it. So it's no longer a resource challenge. It is whether or not the will to do it is there. And you only get the will to do it when you raise hell. Otherwise, left to its own devices, they're gonna send the resources to the suburbs.
So we know we're running close to your time. You're having to go, but will you address that call to African Americans? What should they do?
Well, let me tell you, there's no substitute for being organized. There's no substitute for being unified. We can differ, but the long-term goal has to be the same. For African Americans in this country, it's organize, and execute. The one thing that I've shared with the president, say, even though Mississippi went Republican, when you needed votes to get the Democratic nomination, you got the Democratic nomination because of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Now, all those states went red. But in terms of the African American vote that got you the Democratic nomination, it was those states. So when you went to Iowa, you lost. When you went to New Hampshire, you lost. When you went to Nevada, you lost. It was only when you came to South Carolina
Right.
did it turn around. And then, as I said, the South supported you, basically, because we saw what you did when you were vice president under the Obama administration. And there's some consistency there. So we got to do that. The other thing is there's no substitute for engagement. We have some people in our community who run for public office, and you never hear from them again. They just, and I understand everybody's not a TV star, but if you get elected, and you're spending public money, you ought to say, now, are there Black businesses in this community who could benefit? Give you the best example. When I got picked to chair the Democratic Convention, they told me, we're going to send a camera crew to meet with you to film it. No, you ain't. I got some Black folk right here in Mississippi who know how to do filming.
Right.
Well, I ain't gonna let you tell me, but that same camera, them folk from New York we got one of them here in Mississippi. Facts about it, we got 2 or 3 of them. So we did it. And the thing that you got me, it was such a wonderful spot. You know what they're saying is for Black people, it was it's a subtle racist kind of a thing that like when I suggested Tougaloo College as the location, somebody said, well, what about the facility? I look, I said, they got lights and they got running water. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I said, yes, you did. I said, I meant what I said back to you. The little thing, like how have they ever done it before? We still have a long way to go, brother. That's the only thing I'm saying. Even with some of our friends, we have a long way to go. And so for Black America and Black Mississippians, we still have to unite, organize, execute. But that execution comes in providing courage to our people to do the right thing. Our problem is that courage is not there. They just glad to be in the room, don't want to upset people by asking a question that they should ask. But we should be there to represent who sent, because those people who send us are expecting us to ask the tough questions and stand on principle. And we are still not quite there. The other thing we have to do, and Derek Johnson with the NAACP and myself, we started the Mississippi Black Leadership Institute. We take 25, 30 people every year. Once a month, we do a weekend at Tougaloo, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we're going to teach them everything that we know about public engagement, everything we know about government. And at the end of that, push them out and hopefully kind of serve as an idea venue for them. And I'm happy to say that the mayor of Meridian, graduate of the Institute, the mayor of Greenville is a graduate of the Institute. We have 3 district attorneys in Mississippi who are African Americans, who are graduates of the Institute. We have state representatives. We have school board members. We have all kind of folks. But we were able to kind of prick their interest in the public service with that Mississippi Black Leadership Institute, and it's doing. We got probably about 400 graduates now, all over the state, and that's just our little way of trying to. You can't build a house on mud and expect it to last. So we're trying to build that foundation of Black leaders all over the country, all over the state, so that we can get something done. But it's a struggle. It's a struggle because the system left to itself will keep things just as they are.
Congressman Thompson, we certainly thank you. We're not going to prolong, take up too much more of your time because I have a million other questions I didn't ask.
Well, why don't we just agree that we'll do this again?
We certainly appreciate that. And also, we welcome our platform for you. If you have any information you want to pass along or if you want us to help, we have a nice following.
Oh, okay.
Fortunate.
Thank you much. We do some social media. I think I got about 20,000 followers now. So I'm trying to build up my little cadre. I'd love to do it with you because information is power. And if you have it but don't see it or hear it, it doesn't do any of us any good. So just kind of push it out to me, and I'll make sure we sales available.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Did you have anything in closing that you wanted to make sure that you left out? I mean, got out to the public, to the audience, and everything.
Well, let me tell you, this pandemic is tough. It is doubly tough on people of color. And so I encourage everyone who is engaged in trying to survive it to follow the advice of the health professionals. I don't like it any more than anybody else. It is a problem, but we can get through this. And as Black people, our ancestors survived slavery. And if we have survived slavery only because we had a plan, we can survive this pandemic. I know people want to go back to how it used to be. I do too. But there are some impediments in the way that we got to remove before that can happen. So don't let anybody convince you to do anything otherwise, because it's not in your own best interest, and nor is it in the interest of people you might come in contact with. So from a purely Black health perspective, and what's there, we need to follow the advice of the health professionals with that, and we can get through it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He gave his number earlier to your office. If anybody had any questions, they can always contact you at that number you gave, right?
I didn't quite hear you.
I'm sorry. You gave your number earlier that if anybody had questions.
601-866-9003.
So, again, we thank you, Congressman, for the time. We really appreciate it because we value you as a staple for our community.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed the opportunity, but again, I look forward to the next interview.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Be well.